So I'm Reverend Christy McFarland, Unity of Springfield, Illinois. For those of you who are viewing this online and haven't been with us since the beginning of the service, welcome. Today we are talking about gratitude and thanks, and we are following the Quest series this year written by the Jafalas. And so when we talk about gratitude and thanks this week, I can't help but share a few thoughts today on what I'm grateful for. Less than 2 weeks ago, my dad was taken to the ER and he had all kinds of tests ran on him, and they scheduled him for a triple bypass surgery. And due to the COVID protocols at the hospital, every patient could only have one visitor a day throughout the duration of the patient's stay. And the preference was it had to be the same person. As POA, my sister was able to be at the hospital for the surgery, and she provided my brother and I with updates, which were coming straight out of the operating room. It's amazing what technology can do nowadays. He is at home and he's recovering right now and he's doing well. And all of us siblings, yes, I saw the thumbs up. And all of us siblings are grateful we have our dad around for a while longer. Grateful for the opportunity to say what needs to be said, to have the conversations we haven't had. And goes on. A few days after my dad's surgery, my nephew started saying that his stomach hurt. Literally, it was like 3 days. My sister, yep, you guessed it, took my nephew back to the hospital, took him to the hospital, and his appendix needed to come out right away. I am so amazed at you can be in the ER at 10 o'clock at night, have your appendix removed and be out by 1 o'clock the next day. For this too, I'm grateful. 2 amazing surgeries, 2 doctors that were able to do what needed to be done, and that everything was caught in time. Yeah. In the midst of this COVID pandemic, are you recognizing all the things you have to be grateful for? I mean, I think it's asking us to call to mind all the things that we should be grateful for instead of being caught up in the situation. But it's no easy task right now to stay focused and in the present moment. It's hard right now to focus on what we are grateful for, and yet we must. We are used to springing into action, forging ahead, busying ourselves with endless tasks. We are used to constant busyness. We want to make plans for the future and forge ahead, but in not acknowledging the present moment, we are neglecting to acknowledge that we have something to be grateful for in this present moment. And this brings to mind a quote from Isaiah 43:19. I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wasteland and streams in the desert. Doesn't it feel like that? None of us has experienced anything like this COVID before. Yet there will be gifts in this experience. Of that I can assure you. I'd like to share a story with you this morning about experiencing unexpected gifts. A man had a spiritual experience one year as he was on his way to Colorado for a business trip. When he left home, the weather reports advised of clear skies. There were no reports of bad weather of any kind, and for this he was grateful as he headed to a place in the mountains where his family was going to have a huge gathering the next summer. And as he was going over the Continental Divide, he discovered that the weather reports were wrong. Not only was there snow, it was a blizzard. He was at 14,000 feet and ready to go down a mountain. He drove very slowly, and he did fine. He got to his ranch where he was expected to go, and he was supposed to meet with some people, but they weren't able to get there. So he opened his trunk and he got out his camera to take some pictures, but the snow was coming down so fast that he started to get nervous. And then he realized he was missing out on the beauty and the majesty of the snow. And at that point, something changed in him, something clicked, and he decided it was time to enjoy the snow. He saw scenes in Colorado that most people don't see. He recognized beauty in the fresh snowfall. He began to relax and he let go and let God. He had a wonderful experience and he knew that everything was going to be okay. He felt protected. He was able to slow down enough to really enjoy the trip and see before his very eyes the beauty of God. He was grateful for that, the beautiful snowfall that ended up being so peaceful and serene. Isn't that our main goal here this morning? To slow down just enough so we can enjoy the trip called our lives? When we talk about gratitude and Thanksgiving, I wonder if some of us don't begin to envision the Thanksgiving holiday and what that might look like. And well, since it's 2020 and all of our days, weeks, and months are beginning to blend together, I thought I'd give us a jump start to the Thanksgiving holiday as I found a great story relevant to today's message on the quest. I do have a premise, however. There are many versions of a story once they're told. And as stories go, some of it may be fabricated or historically inaccurate. We just aren't always 100% sure. But this is what's great about being in unity. We each get to determine what we believe for ourselves. Take the best and leave the rest. Have you heard that before? Yeah. So this story is about a Native American man named Squanto. Squanto to Thanksgiving is as important as Santa Claus is to Christmas, or as Jesus Christ is to the meaning of the season. Squanto made a big difference to the first arriving pilgrims. There were 102 brave people who came over to America. They were fleeing religious oppression. Can you imagine leaving the state of Illinois because of your religious beliefs? Yet that is what was happening. You know, not your whole family can come with you. You know, your friends and family cannot be there with you on this journey. And in addition, everyone you are leaving behind, you will probably never see again. It's quite a trip. You don't know where they're going. We didn't have phone calls or internet back then. But you are so devout to God and you are so strong in the way that you wish to worship that you are willing to give up everything you have ever known to have the freedom to worship as you would like. I've known people who have done this here in this country. They have had to leave friends and family that were of a certain religion to attend a church that touched their own hearts. And when they made this choice, many times they were disowned. I personally know a couple that this has happened to. It is still happening today in 2020. Can you believe it? The pilgrims, like my friends, were willing to put their lives on the line for what they believe in. So here you have 102 people boarding a ship and coming to a new world. What's going to be here waiting for them? Nothing. Nothing at all but God and their ability to worship God. They boarded a wooden vessel that had no luxuries. It was the Mayflower. They were at sea for 120 days. They were running out of food and water. They met incredible turbulence on the sea. And finally they arrive in what is now called Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620 at the very worst time, December 11th. The snows were beginning to fall, and the snows that year would be very bad. When they arrived, they didn't realize it, but they were about to face the most severe winter the people could ever remember. They docked the ship, put down the anchor, and came to this strange land in rowboats. In the months that followed, almost one half of the pilgrims died, and all of them would have died if it hadn't been for Squanto. In his old age, he gave his all, even when he didn't have much to give. By the time the snow had melted, followed by a hot summer, by the time of harvest, there were 56 pilgrims left. But thanks to Squanto, they had wonderful crops. For the first Thanksgiving dinner, there were 91 Native Americans and 56 pilgrims, totaling 147 people. And we are told of all the pilgrims, there were only 4 women left, and these 4 women and 2 teenage girls prepared the meal. We often think this is the first Thanksgiving Day celebration, where the pilgrims were able to give thanks for the crops and the blessings that came. But it really wasn't. The pilgrims were well acquainted with Thanksgiving Day celebrations. The Greeks honored the goddess of agriculture in a Thanksgiving celebration. The Romans honored the goddess of corn. The Hebrews gave thanks for abundant harvest with an 8-day feast of the tabernacles. So they were very familiar with the Thanksgiving Day or week-long celebration. If you were one of the 56 surviving pilgrims who had lost their friends and family and had been met with so many challenges, could you have given thanks for your blessings that Thanksgiving Day? I would hope you could. They had the right attitude. They were doing everything they could to survive. We all meet sorrow and challenges in our lives. There have been times when various parts of our lives have died and gone away. Perhaps a loved one, perhaps a career, perhaps someone or something we valued greatly. But the choices we make as spiritual people had to be the same as the early pilgrims. Like the pilgrims, we are still explorers. What are we exploring? We're exploring the new world of our life that is beginning today. We could be unappreciative for our many blessings because things have been so challenging in the world recently. With COVID, floods and fires, civil unrest, and you name it. But we are asked to stand up together and to use the power of appreciation and give thanks for all the blessings that have come our way. No matter how tough life has been, the blessings of God always overwhelm the negative. We are invited to open our eyes more and more all the time, to really see and count our blessings and recognize the good. During the first 2 critical years at the beginning of this colony, Squanto helped the pilgrims. He stayed by their side. He helped them build houses and plant and cultivate crops and learn how to use the land. He helped them build 7 private homes and 2 communal buildings. He was an English-speaking Patuxet Indian. So you're probably wondering, how did he learn to speak English? As a boy, he was playing along the shore and some early explorers captured him. They put him in the hull of their ship and took him to a land where he would work as a slave for the rest of his boyhood and well into young manhood. One day he was able to escape. He went to England and worked for a wealthy merchant. During this time, he mastered the English language. He's resourceful. But his dream was always to get back home and be with his people. And so finally, 6 months before the pilgrims arrived, Squanto returned to his people. Squanto must have experienced many challenges in his life, but there is a God plan that we don't know about, because Squanto was there when these new people, the pilgrims, arrived. Here they met someone who could speak English, and he knew the ways of these people. He knew how to communicate with both the Native American people and the pilgrims. And in doing this, he kept the Native Americans from killing the Pilgrims. He was able to get these two peoples to work together. Here was this elderly man who came back at a very harsh time. That winter was also very bad for his Native American family. The Native American peoples lost hundreds during that cold winter. But he was there, and during the last 2 years of his life, he was able to help the early arriving Pilgrims survive by giving them ways to sustain themselves. Squanto was really an unsung hero who used his challenges to better humankind. One of the things we can give thanks for is that God can turn every challenge into an opportunity. If we think about it, there have been incidents in our lives that we can be grateful for. There have been times when we have come together as a people of this nation to give thanks. Times when we have felt it on a national level. We have all witnessed times when our country has come together. I remember one year watching crowds of people gather around storefront television displays watching the news. Do you remember Jessica McClure? Jessica McClure, she was 18 months old when she fell down that shaft in Midland, Texas. Anyone who has ever had children was right there with that family. She was down there for 2.5 days. And do you remember what it was like when they brought her up alive? How all of us could feel that? So grateful that she survived. The whole country felt it that day. So you might be asking, what do we have to give thanks for in this country these last 12 months? We have had wildfires, floods, hurricanes, COVID-19, and many other challenges, including personal challenges. We can look forward to overcoming. Do you remember the feelings you felt when the Berlin Wall came down? November 9th, 1989. Do you remember the faces of the people who were climbing over the Berlin Wall? You could see it, the incredible appreciation that they felt when they realized their dreams had finally come true, and we were right there with them. Then there is the incredible appreciation we feel when a soldier returns to their family. We have all seen those videos, and we watch them over and over again, shedding tears because of those heartfelt reunions. We're so grateful they were able to return and to see the joy and excitement on their kids' or their husband or wife's face. We're entering a new world as the Pilgrims entered their new world. Because the world is continually changing, it's a joy to be alive in this time if you make it so. It is wonderful to know that God is working in our lives. It is good to use the power of appreciation for everything that is going on in our lives. Myrtle Fillmore wrote, "Grasp the freshness and newness of this present second with its new thoughts and inspirations. We will be inspired. There will be new thoughts. Things will be different. We don't know the how yet. We don't need to know that yet. But truly, there is no finer way to make us grow than to have an attitude of gratitude for everything in our lives, for every second of every moment. It's taking us to the next, to be greater. We learn from people's mistakes as much as we learn from their successes as well. Perhaps there have been people in our own lives who have not lived up to their true potential. But we have learned from that too, have we not? And remember, Squanto learned the best from his captors, and he left the rest behind. God's working through you and inside of you. Too many people in the world go through their lives cursing themselves, their bodies, their abilities, and wondering where God is. What do you get if you use the power of appreciation every day of your life? What do you get if you open your mind to begin to really appreciate everything? You're going to have a switch in the attitude of your mind that brings you joy. Imagine if Squanto had said, "How dare they do this to me? I've had my youth taken away and my life is so bad, I'm truly miserable." He would have come home an old, defeated man, but he didn't. He overcame the challenges. He had the power of appreciation, of seeing the blessings when they came, the opportunities when they came. He had the power of being positive. He welcomed the pilgrims as friends and appreciated them. He used all the toil of his life for the betterment of humankind. In Ecclesiastes 5:19, it says, "Every man also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and find enjoyment in his toil." We are surrounded by the gifts of God. I pray that you have this new power of appreciation in you for everything in your life, for every person in your life, for yourself and for God. Now to Psalm 107:1, enter into God's gates with thanksgiving and into God's courts with praise. Be thankful unto God and bless God's name, for God is good. God's mercy is everlasting, and God's truth endureth to all generations. So why wait until Thanksgiving? I invite us this week to jot down a list of things that you are grateful for, and then give thanks for each and every one of them. Next week, we are talking about prosperity, and we're on chapter 37 of the quest. And until then, know I am with you. And as we prepare to bless this community with our love offerings, we have a way to do that in the chat box, in our Zoom link, or on our webpage as well. And so let's just bless our gifts, our tithes, and we just take them in our hands or envision them in our minds, and we infuse them with our love in this moment. Knowing divine love blesses and multiplies all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. And we truly are grateful. And so it is. Amen. I kind of gave it away earlier when I said the special thanks today was to the Board of Trustees, because it takes a village. So here it is again, to our Board of Trustees, it takes a village. Thank you all for saying yes for this sacred service. We appreciate each and every one of you and the gifts you bring to this ministry. And together we have our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all truly is well.